Hello everyone and welcome to Friday's maths lesson. For today's lesson I'm going to be going through the answers to fractions test 1, which you should have completed yesterday. If you are watching this video and you didn't complete your work yesterday, please go ahead and do that first. It's going to be really important, otherwise you're not going to understand the feedback and I won't have your answers logged. And I need to have your scores logged so I can see which areas of fractions everybody in the class still needs help with. So make sure you've completed fractions test 1. Make sure you've got a pen and a piece of paper because you might want to take some notes. And then I'm going to take you through the answers to the first fraction test, see what we can learn from people's mistakes, and then you're going to have a chance at a second fractions test. The second one has some questions that are similar to the first one, so make sure you're concentrating on the feedback because it's going to help you make sure that you don't make the same mistakes today. And there's also going to be some new, slightly trickier questions or different questions so that you can really test all the limits of your fractions knowledge. So let's start off by taking a look at some of the answers from the quiz yesterday. The first question looked like this, and it said, look at the picture carefully, then answer below. What fraction of the shapes are triangles? And then you had some different options. And what fraction of the shapes are squares? So let's take a look at what answers people gave for question 1. What fraction of the shapes are triangles? As you can see, most people got the correct answer, which was 5/8. I can see that 3 people put the answer as 5. Now I understand why those people did that, because if we have a look at the questions, you can see that out of all the shapes there are 5 triangles, but the question did not ask us how many of the shapes are triangles. So it wasn't looking for a whole number answer, it was asking us what fraction of the shapes are triangles, which means it's asking us how much of the whole amount, what proportion of the whole amount is triangles. Fractions always have a numerator and a denominator, so the answer could not have been 5. The correct answer had to be 5 out of 8, or 5/8. Another way of working that out could have been to count up all the equal parts. So if we look at all the shapes, how many shapes are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And how many of them are triangles? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the denominator would be 8 and the numerator would be 5. Some people also got muddled up with the numerator and the denominator, so some people put 8/5 as the answer. But remember that the denominator corresponds to the whole, how many equal parts the whole has been divided up into, and the numerator corresponds to how many we're looking at out of the whole. So if we're just looking at the triangles, then the number of triangles, 5, needs to be the numerator, and the number of equal parts in the whole amount, so including the triangles and the squares, needs to be on the denominator. For question number 2, a lot of people did really well. I think most people got at least 2 of the correct answers. It said, which of these are unit fractions? Hopefully you all remembered that a unit fraction is any fraction with a numerator of 1. A lot of people correctly figured out that 1/5 and 1/6 are unit fractions. The only one that a lot of people missed was this one, 1/8. Now, even though this fraction has been written in words, if we were to write 1/8 as a fraction using digits instead of words, you would have a 1 as the numerator, and then a line, and then the 8 as the denominator. So this would also be a unit fraction. This is still a unit fraction, it's just written differently. Instead of being written in digits, it's been written in words. The correct answer should have been 1/5, 1/8, and 1/6 are all the unit fractions in this question. For the next question, we had a number line, and this one was testing our knowledge of decimals. We studied decimals when we were looking at tenths because we learnt that decimals were another way of representing tenths. And we did a lot of practice counting up in decimals on a number line. This question asks you what's the first missing decimal. Well, after 0.1, hopefully all of you recognise that it should be 0.2, and between 0.4 and 0.6, we should have had 0.5. Now the next question asked us to do a comparison. I know it's a comparison because it asked me which symbol should go in the middle, and they gave me 3 different symbols that we normally use when we're doing comparison of greater than, less than, and equal to. I think a lot of people might not have realised they needed to do some working out for this question. It says 1/5 of 20 or 1/4 of 20. So it's asking us a fraction of an amount. before I can decide which one is going to be bigger or smaller, I might want to do some working out using my method for finding a fraction of an amount. So I'm going to draw it on here and I'm going to show you. So it says 1/5 of 20. How do I find 1/5 of 20? Well, the first thing I do is I look at the denominator of the fraction, which tells me how many equal parts I'm going to be dividing my whole into. The denominator is 5, so I need to draw 5 equal parts. So I'm going to do 5 circles just like we did in class. There we go. Then I need to divide up the whole, which is 20, among those 5 parts. So hopefully you all remember how we do that. We do one little circle in each equal part. So 1, 2, 3, well, it's really hard to do this without looking, 4, 5, and you keep going, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, sharing equally until we get all the way up to 20, so
I was up to 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
So I've done the denominator, I've done the whole. The last thing I look at is the numerator, which tells me how many of these equal parts I need to look at. Well, the numerator is 1, so I just do a bracket around 1 of the equal parts, and then I count up how many is just inside that bracket. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 in that equal part, so the answer of 1/5 of 20 is 4. If I do the same method to find 1/4 of 20, I will learn that 1/4 of 20 is 5. So what is bigger, 4 or 5? What is greater? Hopefully you all realise 5 is greater than 4, so the symbol that needs to go in the middle is this one here. The one that shows that 1/4 of 20 is greater than 1/5 of 20, because 1/4 of 20 is 5 and 1/5 of 20 is 4. There's one other way of working this out. Some of you might remember we learnt some rules about comparing fractions. I can see that in both of these fractions the numerator is the same. So if I'm comparing them, do I look at the numerator or the denominator? Hopefully you all realise I look at the denominator. And the rule about comparing fractions when you're looking at the denominator is the bigger the denominator, the smaller the fraction. Hopefully you all remember the flow chart that we did in class. The bigger the denominator, the smaller the fraction. So that means the biggest denominator out of these two is the one that's in 1/5, because the denominator is 5. That means 1/5 of 20 is going to be smaller than 1/4 of 20, which is how I know again that this symbol here is going to go in the middle, because the smaller side is pointing to 1/5 and the bigger side is pointing to 1/4. So there's two different ways you could have worked it out. You could have used your equal parts circles to actually find the value of 1/5 of 20 and 1/4 of 20, or you could have used your rules about comparing fractions that you memorized to help you figure out which one is going to be bigger and which one is going to be smaller. The same thing here, except for the fact that here the numerators are different and the denominators are different. So actually we wouldn't be able to use any of our comparing fractions rules to figure out which one is bigger and which one is smaller. We would have to do the calculation by using our equal parts circles to find fractions of amounts. Question number 6. Tim has 16 grapes. He gives 1/8 of the grapes to Sam. How many grapes does he give to Sam? So this is a worded question. What information the question has given us tells us two things. Well, Tim has started off with 16 grapes. That means that's the whole number. Then it says he's given 1/8 of the grapes to Sam. So we know that we're going to have to find 1/8 of the total amount. So we're going to have to find 1/8 of 16. Now this is exactly like the question we did before. When we're finding a fraction of an amount, we have to look at the denominator, draw that many equal parts. So the denominator here is 8, so I'm going to draw 8 equal parts, just like that there, 8 equal parts. And then I'm going to do my sharing out of the whole number, which is 16. 14, 15, 16. And you should be able to see that I've ended up with 2 in each one, but I don't know how many equal parts I need to look at until I check my numerator. Well, the numerator is 1. So I do a bracket over one of the equal parts. So the answer is 1, 2. 1/8 of 16 is 2. So then the amount of grapes he gave to Sam was 2 grapes. Question 7 was actually a tricky one. Okay, it said here, think about equivalent, shade half of the shape. Now, I can't actually shade onto this screen, but I know that if I were to draw a line down the middle and make half, I would have to colour in this whole side to make half of the shape, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these mini squares. So I know that 6 would be shaded in. Then it asked me to complete the equivalent fraction, something over 12. So the denominator is 12. I know that represents the whole shape because if I look at the shape I can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 equal parts. And it's asking me for this bit here, what is the number that goes in that box? Well, I know if I shade in half of this whole shape, it's going to be equivalent to shading in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the mini pieces. In fact, 6 out of the 12 mini pieces. So that's how I know that the answer in here should be 6. The number that should go in the box should be 6. The next question was a vocabulary question. It asked me, what does the box represent? Well, I can see that the box is on the top of the fraction, and hopefully most of you remembered that the top of the fraction is called the numerator. So the box in this question represents the numerator. The final question, now this was an even trickier worded question. So remember, when you're doing worded questions, you always need to try to figure out what is the whole amount, what fraction is it asking you to figure out. Those are the two questions. What's the whole amount? What's the fraction that it's asking you to figure out? What it tells me is Aisha has a bag of marbles. She gives 3/4 of the bag to Heidi. Now I don't yet know the whole amount. It's only telling me that she gives 3/4, a fraction of the whole, to Heidi. And then it says she has 12 marbles left. Now I also know that's not the whole number because the whole number would be all the marbles in the bag. And all it's told me is how much is given to Heidi and how much she has left. How many marbles did she have to begin with? So what the question is asking me, it's actually asking me to figure out the whole. We don't know the whole number. It's given us some parts, but it hasn't given us the whole. I could use a PartWhole model to help me figure out the answer to this question. So I know that there's two parts. There's 3/4, that's one part, and there is 12 marbles as the other part. So I've got one part as a fraction and one part as a whole number. I'm trying to figure out what is this bit at the top, what is the whole? Well, if 3/4 of the bag was given to Heidi, it must mean that 12 marbles that Aisha has left is equivalent to 1/4, because I know that 1/4 plus 3/4 makes a whole. So 1/4 plus 3/4 makes a whole. If 1/4 is 12, can I figure out what the whole is? How could I figure that out using that fact? If 1/4 of the bag of marbles is 12, how could I figure out what one whole is? Well, I know that 4/4 makes a whole. So if I want to figure out the whole and I already know 1/4, I just need to figure out what 4/4 would be. If 1/4 is 12, to make 4/4 I need to do 12 times 4, or 12 plus 12 plus 12 plus 12. Most of you should know your 4 times table, so hopefully you would have figured out that the answer to 4 times 12, or the answer to what is in how many marbles are there in the whole bag of marbles to begin with, is 48. Hopefully going through those answers has helped some of you to recall some of your fractions knowledge and given you an idea of how you can improve in today's lesson. Today's lesson is Fractions Test 2, so you're going to need to start off the test by doing the same thing and putting your name in and then clicking Next. The first question, what is the missing fraction? It says think about what the numerator and the denominator should be. So there's a missing fraction and you're going to need to figure out the numerator and the denominator. So you think about what would the numerator be, what would the denominator be, and put the numerator in this box and the denominator in that box. This one is just like the question we did earlier, what symbol should go in the middle? So try to think about, do you remember how to compare fractions? What are the rules if the numerator is the same or the denominator is the same? And try to be careful about what symbol should go in the middle. Same for this one, think about, do you remember how to compare fractions? Do you remember the rules? Put the symbol in. This one is another worded question. So again, try to think, what is the question asking you to do? Amy, Zach and Harry are running a race. Zach has run half of the race. Amy has run 3/4 of the race. And Harry has run 1/4 of the race. Who has run the shortest distance. So which one of those represents the shortest distance? Remember to convince me your answer is correct. So you need to write what answer you think it is, so you can say if it's Zach, Amy or Harry who's run the shortest distance, and try to prove it. So you might need to say because, and then give me an explanation of your answer. Next question, use the 10 frame to help you complete the number sentences. So this 10 frame is a picture, and it can maybe help you. If you look at the picture carefully, it might be able to tell you how to complete these number sentences or these calculations. So we've got 2/10 plus something tenths makes 10 tenths. So what numerator should go in the first box? So just give me what you think the numerator should be there. And then the second calculation is 1 minus 2/10 equals how many tenths? We did this very recently, in fact, on Monday, adding and subtracting fractions. So have a think what should go in the second box here. Now we have some part-whole models. I showed you a part-whole model earlier. Just remember that the whole is the circle on its own and the parts are always stretching out from the whole. And you've got to think about what fraction should go in this empty circle, and there's a separate box for you to put the numerator and the denominator of the fraction. There's another part-whole model. It looks a bit different, but I'm sure you can still figure out which is the whole and which are the parts. Same thing, think about what the fraction should be, then put in your numerator and your denominator. And another one with a part-whole model. So lots of practice of part-whole models here. Question 9 involves a little bit of thinking. Which shape does not show 3/4? So you've got 3 shapes here. Which shape does not show 3/4? And you can choose the first one if you think it's that one, the second one if you think it's that one, or the third one if you think it's that one. You can select more than one if you think more than one of them does not show 3/4, but you might have to really visualize, think about what we did when we were looking at shapes, remember about imaginary lines, and see if you can figure out which one does not show 3/4. And the final question, it says, select the fraction or fractions, so we don't know if it's more than one or one, shown by the shape. There could be one or more than one. So look at the shape carefully. Select the fractions shown by the shape. So maybe you think it's just one of these answers, in which case you would just click 1. Or maybe you think 2 or 3 of these answers are correct, and you can click all of them. Just look carefully and think about your fractions knowledge. What fraction or fractions are shown by this shape? And then you submit your answer, and that will be the end of the fractions test and the end of your maths lesson. Don't forget, once you finish the test, to go back to your assignment page and mark your work as done if it hasn't been done automatically already. So make sure you tell me that you've finished your work and turn it in so that I know to mark it. Good luck everyone on the final day of fractions, and then we're going to be starting a new topic on Monday.